Welcome everyone. Uh, Today we have another new sessions and we will learn the different dimension of investment, different dimension of the economy, and by this way we will move together in these pandemic situations. I want to welcome our guest, Mr. Ben and Mr. Pathan. Can we please introduce Mr. Iftekhar Pathan and Mr. Ben? Hello everyone, how are you today?
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting for the interview.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Basically, this is actually everybody knows it's a school of economics. So it will be something that definitely we will learn from industry, and definitely we will learn your personal and real life experience. So hopefully our audience will enjoy and we will get a lot of interesting informations. So first I want to introduce Mr. Ben. Can you please introduce yourself with our audience and your background, where you live, what you do, and this kind of thing?
So, hi, I'm Ben. I'm born in India, grew up in Holland, and the last 10 years I'm in Switzerland. I have been in board of a couple of banks, and I'm a member of a lot of think tanks. I teach at the university, and I run the biggest platform or network of impact investors. So investments into projects which are good for the society or for the environment. And I advise a lot of governments and also a couple of funds, major funds like the sovereign funds, on their investment strategies and policies.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I want to go to directly Mr. Iftekhar Pathan. Can you please introduce yourself? And I know that you have a very interesting story. Can you please share with our audience?
Sure. So thank you, Ben, for inviting me for this session with my friend and colleague, Ben Banerjee. And it's nice to be in the presence of you guys. My story actually began from a small village. I come from the rural area. Most of my education started in the vernacular language. And then we shifted to Pune. My parents thought that if we come to a city, we'll be able to get English education, and that's how I started off my journey. Initial days were pretty tough, and we finished my graduation, and then most of my education post that has been extramural. So to say, so we actually it's all out of the experiences that I have had. I started off very small. I started off at a 500 rupee job in 1991, and then since then I have grown. So God has been kind, and my patience, perseverance, and persistence has paid off. Post my graduation, I started working for a large corporate, and from 1998, I have been an entrepreneur, and I've been pretty much on my own. I've worked in different geographies. I worked in Europe. I lived and worked in Germany. I worked in Australia, Asia, Southeast Asia, all of Middle East up to Syria, and have been involved with a couple of important projects between the New South Wales government and the Indian government. I have also worked with the Euro-Asia Business Center in Leipzig in Germany, and on an IT project. Currently, I am a founder trustee of a hospital, which is the first PPP project in my city, which is now expanding to about 300 beds. We are already running a 100-bed hospital. Currently, we're doing a lot of work for COVID there. Also, I'm the board of two companies. One is which is making air to water, which is called Aeronero Solutions Private Limited, and the other is a company in the impact space, which is called Miraculous Technologies. And I serve on the advisory board of some important universities, and I'm a mentor to IIT Kanpur, which is one of the most revered institutes in our country, and I work very closely with the incubation center there, SIIC first. So that is in short what I do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I directly want to go to Mr. Ben. Like you are working as a think tank, you do a lot of research work, and most important thing is that what I understand as a investment analyst and researchers, you also helping different kind of projects and mega projects and different government, different corporations. Can you share the inner story of this kind of work and other things? Because We have many corporation with the collaboration of IBM TV from around the world, from 100 countries. So can you share your experience and your research and your activities with us?
That would take a long time. No, we don't do really research analysis. We generally do investment. So we have our very strict criteria. And since we are working together with the Faith Invests, a lot of religious organizations and the major financial institutions, so we work mainly on the policy level, so supporting them and advising them how to make the policy, how to make the criteria. And on the government level, we are working with the policies. For example, I don't know if you're aware of the Green Deal. That's the European Union came up with a new policy. The next 20 years, all the economic investments will go into projects which are going to cut down the carbon emission. And we were one of the writers of the Green Deal. So because I'm also the board of Climate Leadership Coalition, which is the biggest business group of Europe on this topic. So we have been working very strongly on different aspects, different policies, and impact investment, of course. Asia has been the major kind of source of the destination of impact investments since a very, very long time. So we started, I don't know, if you must be aware of the micro banks, which are one of the initials, but then it has been mainly in the agri sector. So we have been very, very strong in agriculture projects in India, in Far East and Southeast Asia. Also now we are doing a lot of investment projects in Africa, which are good for the region and the environment around there, and also good for the food production, because food production we see as a major boom in the next century or the next decades. So that's that's in very short where we are working on. And impact investment is at this moment the fastest growing asset class. We already have crossed, I think, around 800 billion this year. And the next year, so this year, the target is anyway, it will cross 1 trillion. And especially because of Corona, that has been quite a very positive for us in this way, because that has made a lot of policymakers and financial institutions aware of the risk of investing just like that without looking into the consequences. So that has been, this Corona period has been very, very interesting for us. And since I also advise a lot of governments, mainly in Europe, Nordics, Finland, Germany, and Switzerland, and of course, Norway. I also advise Hong Kong. So in the financial sector, because I focus mainly on the financial sector, the impact has been quite reassuring for us. Because what I heard also from the Hong Kong governor is that since the Corona, because they managed Corona very well, they closed the border immediately since they had the past experience with SARS. So compared to Europe, they did a much better job in Corona, but it did make their financial institutions finally wake up. And now whenever they invest somewhere, they really look into the environmental impact and other kind of impacts. So which is really positive for us because the awareness is increasing very fast. And that has been our objective since more than 2 decades. So, and of course, a lot of old European families are supporting.
Thank you, sir. I want to go to Mr. Iftikhar. Like you are working in the Indian markets and you have a lot of international exposures. So how actually this kind of impact funding helping the developing nations? Can you give us some practical experience and story?
Sure. So, India actually, we were doing pretty well in the current dispensation, and the economy is growing good. We are on the ease of doing business, top 100 countries in the world. So, and the economy was growing to about 7%. But during the COVID, obviously, it is hit. But as far as the funding is concerned, India has become a hub now. So in 2017 and 18, we had some 50 active investors from around the globe with as much as 5.2 billion investments. And there have been a lot of successful exits as well. But if you look at, I just like to go into the history. If you look at conventionally, if you look at India, CSR or doing good has been ingrained in our psyche from a very, very long time. From the times of the Maurya dynasty. The philosopher Kautilya used to talk about doing good to people, having ethical practices and principles. And it has also been sometimes uh, a part of the religions. So, in Islam, you have zakat, and in Hinduism, dharmata. So they used to build a lot of night shelters, and they used to give a lot of alms to people. And in the famines, they used to open up the granaries for poor people. And similarly, the Punjabis have Dashan. So all that has been a part of the Indian culture. So it is not, CSR is a new term, and we know that Howard Bowen introduced that in 1953, and we call him the father of CSR. But Indians know what CSR is from a very early times in our life. We have grown up with it. So slowly, that philosophical or the philanthropic rather nature of the Indians now has seen uh, a different paradigm shift, and there's a lot of people interested in doing impact funding. I will tell you a fact that in this decade, there is going to be $128 billion going to be given to the new generation for spent, and they are wanting to spend this in impact funding. They want to actually work collaboratively in impact innovation funding. So things as far as India look extremely good at this point of time. What has happened because of COVID? There's been a month, there's been a shake-up of the consciousness of people in India, and the youngsters and the millennials want to definitely put in a lot of family money and business money into impact funding. So if you ask me, it's a big yes. It's a great time for impact funding in India.
Thank you, Mr. Iftikhar. Mr. Ben, like at present, we have a COVID-19 situation, many economical challenges. Every country, let's say I'm from Malaysia, and every country has economical challenges. I think that from USA, Europe, Asia, Africa, every country has economic challenges. But my question is that investment also very important for growing economy and for the sustainability and these kind of things. But how strategically your impact funding and your investment strategy can help economy? Let's say I can give you example. Let's say Malaysia, they already lose 17% of their GDP. USA also lose their
Mhm.
GDP. Other country also losing their GDP. But how your organization taking initiative? How you working right now?
To start with, I will say that the losses have been severe. It has been very severe in life and in livelihood of especially the middle and the lower income groups and the poor people. But and the GDPs have reduced. But this has also given, it has been a positive and negative. So negative is that you increase, what I said, you mentioned yourself, your GDP has reduced severely. And but the positive side is that there's going to be a lot of change in lifestyle, the ways we are working, the traveling, fashion, vacation, real estate diversification. So a lot of things depends on how long this corona is going to last. And does the policymakers, our politicians and political leaders have the courage to push through the changes which they are supposed to be pushing through, which they were trying since a long time? And thirdly is we have to think long term. So it has been, in that way, it has been good. The sectors which have been hit very badly is, for example, supply chain. That has been quite badly hit, especially for agriculture, airlines, production. So a lot of variables are changing around the world at this moment. So we are basically very strongly focusing on local agriculture. And we are also asking the governments to increase their policies or make their policies better to encourage people or investment institutions or financial institutions to invest into projects which do lesser impact or less negative impact on the environment and surrounding. So for us, it has been quite positive. There are also the negative sides because of the shrink in the GDP. A lot of assets have become distressed, whether in the share market or in the real estate market. So there's some of the old-fashioned traditional investors are still going into buying into these distressed products. And we are trying to ask or advise them not to do that, but to diverge, because many of financial institutions are now left behind with a huge amount of liquid assets. because they have liquidified a lot of their assets. And these assets can be now used to invest, especially in countries like Malaysia or India, which is really a growth economic. I mean, Europe, I'm from Europe. Europe is not a growth economy anymore. We are fast losing on many aspects. We are losing on the technical advantage. We are losing on our growth aspects. But countries like Malaysia and India, they are the future. And that's where our investment. So that's what we are encouraging all the financial institutions here to make it more easy to invest in countries like Malaysia, and especially IT sector. Like I mentioned, the supply management, IT sector is extremely important for supply management. Also for other agri sectors, which is very important for us. So we are increasing our investments into these sectors very strongly, and also advising our members, because we run the biggest platform of the impact investors in Switzerland, to invest more and more into Malaysian projects or Indian projects and Indonesia. Now Indonesia is also coming in very, very strongly. So that's why we are producing and investing in there. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I want to ask you another question, then I will go to Mr. Patan, because this is very interesting session. If we just focus that when we know that when any investment company or a bank want to do investment in international market, they have to find out many ways, like the political situation, environmental situations, even their markets, and they have to do a lot of feasibility study and other things. Let's say when you focus on Asian market, what type of things you have to analyze, as well as how you make a better ecosystem for investment and make it more effective in the present situation. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. Did you ask it to me or to Iftikhar?
No, I am asking you, Mr. Ben. Yes.
Oh, okay. So what we do, previously what we have done in the past for due diligence and for studies is basically use because we have three basic focus source of incomes. One is the financial institutions, like the banks, funds. One is the government policies or the government institutions, like the European Investment Bank and all that. And the third is the religious institutions, the faith invests. So because I don't know if you're aware, but 3 years ago, we brought the head of the 12 religions here in Zug, and they committed a part of their assets for social and environmental projects. And that has been set up. It's a massive fund of around nearly $1 trillion, run under the leadership of the Vatican, but also the Hindus, Buddhists, Shia, Sunnis, Shia, Jews, they're all participating in this. So these are the three different sources. So if you look at where the project sourcing is coming to due diligence, a lot of financial funds from Switzerland, we have a lot like Responsibility and Blue, what's the name? They are very, very strong. They have their people, local people in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in India. They have their offices and everything. Other major funds do not, but then they invest in funds and fund structure. So for example, if there's a fund in India or if there's a fund in Malaysia or somewhere, they invest in fund and fund. But the biggest is the religious organization, because the religious organizations have an extremely big footage in these countries. They know where the right projects are. They know who the right people are. And they are the oldest. I mean, if you look at the Catholic Church, they are the oldest organizational model, which still is fully active and functional in the world. So yes, that's where the projects are coming from. So they tell us which are the projects, who are the people we have to deal with. And that's what we are doing in the policy making also. And one thing which you must have noticed, the world is changing. So how I mentioned that in 19th century was a world of return. I invest and I want to see how much money I make out of it. 20th century was the world of return and risk, that I want to invest, but what is the risk of my investment? How much, if I invest in India, I get more money. If I invest in Germany, I get less money, but the risk in India is higher than. But today is the world of risk, return, and impact. So like Iftikhar said, that especially the new generation is extremely very conscious about the impact of their investments. Same is valid I can't speak for Malaysia or India, but I can speak about Switzerland or Germany, where the middle class people are very, very aware of the impact on the environment. Where is their pension money going? Where is their saving money going? So these aspects really do now play a very major role. So, and there's two very important things that come here into action is the liability. So today, if we invest in a project, say, for example, in Indonesia, which creates a massive environmental disaster, we can be held responsible financially here, whether we are in Switzerland or America, doesn't matter, we will be held.
Absolutely.
And so that liability is increasing, and also the risk, how much of the money we are investing in a project, for example, a fossil fuel project, what will be the disaster if something goes wrong? Or, for example, if you take China, for example, China is investing heavily into coal power stations all over Africa. But these are stranded assets because soon these African countries are going to end up with a massive debt and with an asset which they cannot do much with because coal is on its way out. So these are the things which our world moving towards. And this is where the investment is flowing towards. So the future is quite very, very bright at this moment, especially with the awareness, how people are getting more and more aware of the impact. And even in India, I'm hearing the same story that Iftikhar, correct me if I'm wrong, but investors really are now worried about what is the impact their investment is going to do or have. They just don't invest left and right, but they are looking at the impact that if there is some kind of bad or negative consequence. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, there's a farmer in Peru who filed a legal case against RWE, which is the biggest electrical company in Germany, because he claimed that because of the RWE factory there, it has increased the temperature, which has started glacial melting of the glacier, which has damaged his house. He is in Peru, which is like thousands and thousands of kilometers away, but he is holding RWE responsible. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is coming more and more and more. So investors now will have to really reconsider before they invest into RWE. And also, if you look at the flow, even countries like Saudi Arabia, which is very heavily dependent on its petroleum production, today is moving out. It is investing in other criteria because it knows the future is not with fossil fuel. So that movement is going worldwide. Same is valid with Russia. Same is with China, India. So you see a massive Rockefellers who made their money completely from petroleum industry. Today, they have completely disinvested from petroleum industry because the head of is the old friend of mine, the Rockefellers, and they were saying that it's already 2 years ago, they absolutely got out of petroleum industry. So this already gives a kind of idea of where we are moving towards.
Absolutely. Very well said, Ben. I agree with you completely. In India, there is a huge amount of consciousness. It's not the blind investment earlier that was conventionally people used to say, I'm just putting in $100 and I want maybe 150. Today, they want to do things with more consciousness, more aware investors want to do something which has a sense of giving back to the society, something which is sustainable. And they are very, very inclined towards transparency in businesses. Obviously, they want to know the ROIs and IRRs, but other than that, it's all about giving back to the society. So that consciousness somehow has been triggered lately.
Yes. Thank you. I just want to add Mr. Vishal, because he already joined. Can you please introduce yourself, Mr. Vishal, with our audience?
Sure. Hi. First of all, sorry, I had some trouble getting through the Chrome. It just hung for some time, so it took 5 minutes. So hi, I'm Vishal Naik. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Miraculous. Miraculous is a social enterprise which is on a mission to kind of scale impact and do value exchange across the ecosystem. So we are building an ecosystem platform. So I come with about close to 2 decades of technology and business consulting experience across the globe, working with a lot of blue chip companies. I was last working with Amdocs, leading the AI and machine learning practice. And since last 2 years, we've been on this mission to kind of make a big impact in the social space and help nonprofits scale.
Yes. Thank you. Like I directly want to go to, because Mr. Ben want to add something for impact funding and this kind of analysis. Yeah.
Oh, I was just adding on to what Iftikhar was saying, that how the investment idea is changing here. So also in the project of, how do you call it? In the production, we are changing a lot on the production lines. There is investments going on. Even for example, I can give a very concrete example, Norwegian Sovereign Fund. It's one of the biggest funds I think most people are aware of. They faced a massive loss of equity value, especially because of the corona. And they had to disinvest also very heavily because Norwegian Sovereign Fund also is one of the financial source of the Norwegian government. And the Norwegian government lost a lot of tax funds, so they had to compensate, and they used the Norwegian Sovereign Fund, so they had to. And now they are coming into, they have not much lots of equity left, and they are now thinking about investing their equity. And that is where we come in. And we say, okay, now you have to invest in countries like Malaysia, India, where there is really growth capital, because the time is over. This I have been speaking more than 10 years. We should stop investing in bonds especially because of the government policies in Europe, in the EU. Investing in bonds like the government bonds, which are either on negative interest or which is sometimes worth toilet paper. I'm sorry. But instead, if you invest in impact investment projects where it's a guaranteed, if you look at the results of what happened with the last financial crisis, when the whole world's financial market was melting, it did not impact Africa and Asia that severely. The financial loss of equity was not that. The default ratio in Africa and Asia was far lower than in the Western world. So people who invested there made extremely lot of good money, while the rest of the world lost. And this is what we are facing now. So now the Norwegians are also moving into that vector. Same is valid. Finland has now a new prime minister. She's also pushing to that. EIB, the European Investment Bank, has now a new policy that they will invest only in projects which fulfills the Paris Agreement, or which is aligned to the Paris Agreement. Otherwise, they won't invest anymore. And they're agnostic to border. It doesn't matter whether you're in Germany or in Malaysia. So these are really concrete examples of how the investment model and the investment world is changing.
My question is that politically, developing nations, how they are capable to negotiate with this first world and other things you are talking about, actually, like how actually this kind of like investment funding and other things, the developing nations political group of people and their parties involved, and they're getting benefit, or how it works actually.
So I was speaking a couple of months back in the banking federation in Liechtenstein. So we had the head of the 400 biggest banks of the world who were representing there, and I was speaking. And then when the discussion started on how much return on investment we are making, or how much, I stood up and I said, ladies and gentlemen, it's very nice to know how much return on investment we are going to make in the next 5 or 10 years. But if the ocean level rises, or if, and this was pre-corona time, if one of the pandemics come or something, you can forget your return on investment. There will be such a massive loss of assets. So it's very nice to think about 10 years return of investment if you don't even know where your investment is going to. And what the governments, for example, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, I was speaking at the United Nations. This was, I think, 6-7 years ago. Bangladesh is a very good example, because they are going to face immense problem with the global warming. I mean, they are already losing land. They may end up losing 17 to 20% of their land. But the population is not going down. Population is just increasing. So where on earth are they going to move? Then the president of Tako is also an old friend. It's an island which is going to disappear. Where are they going to move? So we cannot just keep on talking about our return on investment if we don't know the impact of our investment. And same with Malaysia. If Malaysian government, I think one of the issues what the West has in the past, or by West, I mean, I'm talking on behalf of Europe, is a risk, because the perception is that, yes, if I invest in Germany, my money is safe. If I invest in Malaysia or India, I don't know, because I do not have my I do not see where my money is going, so my money can disappear. But again and again, facts and every studies have proven that this is pure perception, which is not based on any logic or any reality. The investments in Africa, for example, if you look at the macro banks, has far better or IT in financial inclusion. We invest in a lot of projects who are doing businesses like Miraculous of Iftikhar and Vishal. Projects in Africa, which are doing amazing because they're working on leapfrog technology. That means they're not going from telephone to mobile phone, but they're going directly into smartphone. That is where the money is being made. That is where the growth is there, and that is where the future is there, whether we want it or not. And that's where the income is there. So I think for Malaysia, if you have a kind of platform where you can bring together the projects, so one problem from the investor point is the perception, because the West has their perception that we don't have control and the money can disappear and there can be corruption and all that. And second issue, what we have is we don't know where to find the real projects. We don't know who is the local player in India. We don't know who is the local player in Malaysia. We don't have any of this knowledge. So if there can be a platform, or if the government can take the guarantee that they come up with a kind of due diligence or a kind of something which says that these are the projects which money is not the problem. Money is more than enough. It is only we need, because quality is always our headache. Same with the financial institutions here. They have, if you read on the paper, they have billion here, trillion there. They have so much money available, but they can't find projects. So if you can help, or if your government can help, saying that this is the project we are trying to do, or we are making an infrastructure development, because we have also helped countries like Algeria. I was there a couple of years back on their smart city development projects. So we took our whole, not only the funds, but we also took our whole teams. So teams who are specialized in smart city from Finland, from Netherlands, we all went there. I took them all with me, and so you have the massive infrastructural project developments which are being done with eyes on the impact on the local, taking the local people in consideration. Same we are doing a lot in African countries, like in Ghana and a couple of other countries. So yes, indeed, we need a kind of, not due diligence, how would you say, a kind of, where the government of Malaysia or the government of India can say, we stamp or we say that these projects are good. That's one. And secondly, which is even better, we don't expect it, but if it comes, then it is even better, is if the government says that we stand at least partial guarantee for these projects. They don't have to be 100% guarantee, but they can say partially we stand guarantee that that people support this project maybe with 20%, 30%, whatever.
I agree with Ben. Definitely. Ben, just to add to what you said, in India, the scenario is changing. So the honeymoon for the guys who wanted to do mischief is over. They have closed down a lot of companies who are just there for the sake of tripping and, doing mischief. Those companies have gone down. Ease of doing business, we actually, like I told you before, we're 100 best in the world now. Countries. So, and the government is understands that FDI that is coming in, they need to undertake that, they need to support the people who are coming from outside, and things are changing. It's going towards transparency. More people are being gotten into it, because a lot of people, in India don't pay tax. So slowly, the dispensation is very pro transparency, and they're doing all in their strength to sort of have transparent and good business practices, principle, and ethics. Sharif, you're on mute.
Mr. Vishal, do you want to add something?
Actually, I agree with Ben, because even in our last 1 year, we have been talking to hundreds of NGOs, a lot of corporates in this thing. So even in India, what we found is there is money in terms of this thing. It's not just CSR. There's a lot of philanthropic money in terms of HNIs, ultra HNIs, foundations we want to do. But the problem was, as Ben said, is even within India, what is, how do you build that trust? How do you build that transparency to make it available? Because if you get the right project, which is really doing very good social impact, and it's a scale to kind of impact millions of lives or thousands of lives. There are both CSR corporates and HNIs and retail investors who are willing to back you. So in fact, this is what we are trying to do at Miraculous. We're trying to build a platform which is common. You build the trust, you build the transparency, because if you do that, I think the projects will start getting funding, and it doesn't matter whether how small the project is or how big, because in the social impact space, you could be doing a very short NGO working in one village, but you could be also working on very large sustainability projects, which is impacting climate change or deforestation and other things. So I completely agree with Ben. And as Iftikhar said, there has been a huge clampdown. In fact, since 2013, the CSR law has come in, and now with COVID coming in, I think every company that is working in will be looked at from what are they doing from an impact perspective, what are they doing from a sustainability. Are we into a circular economy? How can we move into things doing better on what, considering humans and people at the center of what you're doing, climate and other factors which will impact planet Earth. I think that's what which is happening in India as well.
Yeah, yes, thank you. But I have another question, because when a country like, you are talking about Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, or even this kind of country, when they build up their national strategy, let's say for energy sectors or for other sectors, so still they are trying to adding, let's say, coal related projects. They are trying to add different kind. Not only they are focusing on solar energy, because example, country like Bangladesh, it's a very small, they do not have enough land, and they have to focus on other thing, I think, which is not relevant according to your need. Maybe you are more focused on green energy and these kind of things. But my question is that how actually you can give them better policy. Like, policy is important, because maybe different kind of political lobby and other thing, they give them policy, and by this way they are, sometimes I see from my point of view, they are very confused what they do, because of the highly influence of political lobby with the political people. So how actually, yes, I know, everybody know, even in Malaysia, they are also moving with green technology. But in South Asia, still we find that coal energy, these things, that things, too much of things. But I think policy-wise, they have to improve more. But how people like you or organization like you, how you can help this kind of countries and government to build up better policy, better strategy?
What we did in the past also for other countries is that we are not just an organization of investors, but we are an organization of businesses. So all our members are business. They're major, massive businesses. Most of them are few of the world's biggest businesses. So so for example, when SIA or when CLC speaks, the governments know that they are speaking with the biggest business conglomerate in that area. So that makes a sense. So for example, if we say to Malaysia that let's do our infrastructure, it's not only about policies and it's not only about talking theory, but we do have the knowledge, we do have the people, the expertise, and the resources to build the infrastructure there, like we did in Algeria and other countries. So it's not just talking. I mean, it's just a very funny story. 7 or 8 years back, we were in Helsinki sitting in, I don't know, I think in Malaysia you don't take alcohol, but in Helsinki we do, very strong ones. So a couple of our board members were sitting and getting drunk on alcohol, and they thought, oh, why don't we use the heating from the center of the earth to warm up our cities? This was 8 years ago. Last year, in Tampere, that's a city around 100 kilometers north of Helsinki, they built the biggest underground. So what they drilled, I don't know the exact number, it's like 11 or 12 kilometers underground, and they're using the heat of the earth to heat half of the city of Tampere, which costs nothing, and it is rotating. So you're using the heat to come up in the winter to heat all the city, the houses. Wonderful. And in the summer, they're doing exactly the opposite. They're bringing the heat back to the center of the earth. So the center is where they're taking the heat from the rock formation, is not losing the heat all the time, but it's changing. So they're using this system. This was just born because the 2-3 people who were getting drunk, they had the resources and they had the universities and the knowledges to carry it out, to implement it. So these are not just drunk people, but these are drunk people with massive resources. So when we are talking to Malaysia or India, it's again the same story. These are people with massive resources, and we have the resources. So if we come and we say we can do this, like now we are in Brazil. I think you all are aware of the Amazon forest fire and all that.
Yeah.
But many people are not aware that one of our member is the biggest investor in Brazil. He has, I think, 8 or 9 billion invested in Brazil. And when he goes and tells the president of Brazil that please watch out what you're doing because this is having very negative influence on my investment, believe me, the president of Brazil has to listen because he's the biggest investor there, a foreign investor. So there is, so it's same with Malaysia. And secondly, we have the expertise. Okay, there is a difference. Malaysian government may be working different to the Swiss government or the Finnish government, the German government, but on policy levels, it's the same. So when we can come and say, this is how the Finns did it, or this is how the Norwegians did it, or this is how the Swiss did it, the government can listen to us and can learn from us, and we can support it. We did with the technologies. So I'm very focused on CIS countries also. That is the ex-Soviet Union countries. So like the president of Armenia is a colleague of mine from EWI. So we have been supporting Armenia on building its technological base, its innovative base, because Armenia is an amazingly advanced country on fundamental sciences. They are, I mean, I was amazed at the education. They learn how to play chess at the age of 5 or 6. It's a mandatory subject in their school. In Switzerland, you will be surprised if even 1% of us will be able to play chess. So these kids are far ahead. So why completely isolate them in today's world of internet and technology? They don't have to be isolated. They are part of us. They are part of the same economy. And that is what we are doing also with Africa and Asia. We are bringing all these isolated economical parts into the mainstream economy. Same we are doing with Russia. We are doing a lot of projects in Russia, also advising the Russian government on that. So it is policymaking. The policymaking goes strongest when you are speaking with, on one hand, you're speaking with people who have created such policies, who are doing so, like, for example, the government authorities from here, we can bring them to Malaysia. Secondly, the businesses, the major businesses who have the resources, the technology, the knowledge, and who have implemented such projects. And the last of all is the investments, the funds. So we have all of these three available. Only we need to know that the person we are sitting opposite to is also the decision maker and is also the right person. Because it also happens that very often we end up on the table where the person, I don't want to name names, but there has been countries in Africa where the person was not a decision maker, or he was a decision maker, but within a few months he was not. So it has to be a very broad-based decision makers. So, for example, if we take the case of India, because we do a lot in India, so it should not only be the prime minister, but the head of the ministries, the head of the government services. They should all be involved in this, because without policies, it will not work. You need the right policies in place. Also, for the investment point of view, for the resource, for the project development, you need the right policies. The way, I mean, I can name countries, but in the way some countries have been acting, it doesn't work. And I think Malaysia is extremely stable and very, very politically, I think you're a very stable country, and economically also you're a very strong country. So you have all the right things in place.
Thank you, sir. I definitely want to ask question to Mr. Iftikhar Pathan and Mr. Vishal that what the Indian insight you want to share with us, because of India also doing very good jobs, and you also have different kind of projects in your hands. So what the insight of your organizations you want to share with our audience, and how you can attract more investors and how you can attract more technologies and other things for the Indian community and the Asian community.
Vishal?
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting question in terms of getting right investors. I think taking a cue from Ben, I think India has started well in terms of policy because, say, way back in 2012 or 2013, there was no legislation on CSR. The money was just round trip. There's a lot of things. It was just looked at a bad way of kind of supporting things. Nobody believed that social good could happen through that. But once 2013, this legislation came in, it took a couple of years to settle, and it was taken forward by the next government. As you say, there's transition. Policies do help in transition. It is not a person dependent, this thing. It started with a very simple 2,000, 3,000 crore kind of things coming through that. And eventually now it's about 12 to 15,000 crores every year that is being pushed into that. In fact, this was one of the biggest investments coming and saving a lot of NGOs, a lot of things in these times where we are in today. In terms of technology as well, and looking at broader policy as well, right? The government, especially now we are in the process, the government is looking at setting up a social stock exchange. So that's a step in the right direction in terms of what you're doing, right? There are many more things in terms of there's a platform being looked at. How do you get people together? There's a lot of push on the technology end because I think policy is one of the key building pillars, but the other pillar is technology, and within technology is data. So I think government has really focused this. There's a data privacy policy coming, which is across not just social impact, but which is very important. But there are other things in push. So there are a lot of things happening from government side as well to kind of look at new technologies like blockchain, AI, and how this can actually help in all sectors, but specifically in social impact. So there's been a lot of initiative, a lot of this thing. In fact, we're just on the 1st of September, we are participating in a hackathon, Miraculous, where we are one of the partners there, where we are looking to see how can cutting edge technologies promote social good, right? How can we kind of solve problems around financial inclusion, ed tech, and other things. And we at Miraculous, I think technology in the coming future is going to be key. This thing, we ourselves are using a lot of blockchain to bringing transparency, a lot of AI, because I think data can kind of really get things out there. So even if you look at social impact on return, right? The way we look in the commercial world, you look at how do you get ROI? Here, it's just not dollars that you're looking at impact. So there is a lot of things which in being created right now, and I think AI and data, which is actually helping drive. Because if you, as Ben said, there's a problem, is not just the money. I think the money is there, showing that. Now, how do you show that? You need to have the data in place. How do you get the data? You need to get technologies in place which aggregate projects, which shows, recommends, technologies in place which gets you the beneficiary information to say that, okay, I funded this. This is a kind of a organization I trust. This is a project which we can look at. Now, how do you get that last mile data out there, right? So that's where this thing, I can give you another example, which I heard from Africa. I forgot the name of the nonprofit, but this is a very interesting. In one of the summits there, one of the speakers quoted was one of the schools was really struggling with kind of a grant or a donation. And they were looking at a very small, about 30 to 50K grant. Now, one of the technology folks who was working in this area came and created a project for them, which was using VR. What they did was they just did a shoot of the existing school and what they are doing, and then just made it available. And believe me, they were able to forget about 50K. They were able to raise more than $1 million. So if you build technology and put the right processes and policies, I think that's thing. And this is what we are doing at Miraculous. We are early in our cycle. So we have been just 2 years into this in terms of the social impact. We have just started engaging with the policymakers, and Iftikhar actually can talk a lot more about it. We have been interfacing with a lot of policymakers and look at what's happening in the next 5 years, because if you do something and the policy, as Ben said, completely changes, can take you for a toss. So you need to kind of have the risk analysis done and things in done, both from technology, business, and impact perspective.
Yes. I mean, what I can add to this is that what Vishal said, we did it like 15 years ago. So one of my friend, he created the London Social Stock Exchange.
Yes.
The negative side of the story is that it was not very successful in the beginning because people often misunderstood impact with charity. So they thought social stock exchange means that it's a charity or you give money in, but that was not the point. So it took them more than a decade to make people understand. But today, luckily, we live in a different world. People are now aware that it is a pure investment. And very often people lose the difference because we are not philanthropy, we are not charity, we are pure investment organizations. Yesterday, I was talking to the head of the Methodical Church of US. They are amazingly rich. They're extremely big. They do pure investments. They don't do. They do pure charity, social welfare all around the world. Now, what they are thinking, which is amazing, because they are not the only one. There are more institutions who have approached us. We are doing the same. They are thinking of using the charity money to complement or to create the surrounding in a way that it increases or it encourages investment clear businesses to come up. So, for example, like Vishal said, so if the charity organization builds a school, then the children can get IT for their education system supplied by investment grade company, and that investment grade company gets the investment from investors. So it's a very good combination of charity with investors that we are working at today, and it's a massive evolution because extremely many big organizations are now thinking about it because they know, especially the big ones. In Switzerland, we have Helvetas and a couple of them. They have been doing for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, only charity aid, charity aid. It's on one side, their charity is drying up. The government is cutting slowly and slowly. They are cutting their income source. People are also not being that very generous, especially when the economy is down and people themselves don't have job. They're not going to accept. And secondly, they have found out that investments, for example, in Africa, Asia, Europe, wherever, works always better than charity. I think there was an old saying that it's better to teach a man how to fish than to give him money. I don't know the exact story, something like that. And it is working. And these major organizations are working at this. So in this case, there is going to be what Iftikhar and Vishal are doing, which is amazingly good, is that you have a platform where the charity money or the philanthropical money can work together with the investment money, because in that case the investors also feel a bit better because they know that the risk that they are going to lose everything is kind of sort of mitigated because there's also massive amount of philanthropic money in there. So the social stock exchange in today's world is a very good idea. 15 years ago, maybe not so good.
Just to add to what Vishal and Ben said, Sharif, India was the first country in the world to make CSR mandatory, which happened in 2013. And since then, there has been a huge amount of spend, like Vishal mentioned the figures, between 12,500 to about 15,000 crores year on year. 19, I think it went a little, maybe about 8,500 or so. But now people are spending a lot. One is that. The other thing is the current dispensation is very pro business. In fact, they were also accused of saying that they will pander to the corporate greed so much. But they are bringing in policies, like I mentioned a little earlier, about ease of doing business or having transparency or cutting off the red tapeism that was existent in India for a long time. So all that, there is a lot of reform coming in terms of policies and in terms of ease of doing business for the corporates. There is a huge movement as far as the entrepreneurship is concerned, in the sense that there are a lot of incubators that have come up. There are incubators specifically for social entrepreneurs. So obviously, US the biggest, and then China, and then us. But we are trying our best. We are working with very closely with Dr. Nikhil Agarwal at IIT Kanpur. Over there, we are working with some of the innovative technologies and social entrepreneurs, because what we are doing in Miraculous best fits with the innovators at IIT Kanpur. Other than that, some of our friends, there are fantastic example in rural India. We always normally talk of urban India, but if you look at a place called Baramati in India, they have some 11 innovative products that they in the environment, in sustainability, and they run huge amount of NGOs that is doing work for the betterment of environment. The other example within the group that we work in is a lady who's into fashion. So now it's not just fashion for her. So she's changed the whole repositioned the business of sustainable fashion and fashion
Yeah.
for the disabled. So there is a whole lot of innovation, and India is known for frugal innovation. So the top five things in the world, if you see the cheapest cardiogram, uh, so many other things. All this has been done by India. So in frugal innovation, in entrepreneurship, in policy, and the current dispensation, I think this is the best time for impact investing.
Yeah. And it's also just, I just want to clarify, one thing I always get confused with the word crore because I never know how many zeros are in that. I think it is 10 million, no?
Yes, 10
Yes,
million.
Ah,
I
10
think
million.
10.
10
One
million.
crore
Mr.
equals to 10.
okay. So
Yes.
what
Okay.
I just wanted to say is that investments, impact investment doesn't only have to be in emerging countries. It can also be in developed countries, because developed countries often have projects or businesses which are extremely good for India, Asia, and everything. It's agriculture products or innovative product, technological products, which are very good for Asian countries. So it doesn't have to be one direction flow. It is both direction flow. We have projects which are going on in Finland, but which are amazingly good for India or Africa, or projects going on in Netherlands, which are very, the technology which is very, so it is a two-way flow. It doesn't have to be only emerging markets.
Yes. One thing I just want to add, I think our audience also want to know about that. Like example, what about small medium enterprise or the microeconomics? How actually investors can do some sort of investment in the microeconomy or small business, and they also getting some good result for that. Even in Malaysia, I know that Malaysia for microfinance, they get it from Bangladesh, and with the microfinance, then with their own policy and with their own capacity, they do build up a bank amana, and the bank amana actually producing many good entrepreneurs and very good sustainable economy. Can you share something about this kind of like microfinance related initiative, or
Yeah.
investors can invest on that particular
We
project?
have done a couple of these projects in Africa, and of course, Mahmood's microfinance from Bangladesh and India. Yes, but it has to be a sort of local initiative. We can support maximum with the technology, but the initiative has to be local because we do not have the people locally there who can do the due diligence, the fund how do you call it, allocation, the picking up the premium or the interest every year. So there has to be some kind of local, or not some kind, but it has to be a very strong local participation,
Absolutely.
and with the government support. The government has to protect it, because otherwise, I don't remember if they correct me, this happened like 6-7 years back or something in India, in Hyderabad or something. One of the government or one of the local chief ministers decided that the whole thing of microfinance, it's a long story. I think Iftikhar and Vishal know
Yeah,
much more about it. It exploded in the face, and a lot of Western
it did.
investors were hurt with that. And
Yes,
that gave for them a temporarily kind of negative taste to microfinancing, because it was not the ideology, it was the implementation where it went wrong, which created some
exactly.
farmers
Yeah,
committing suicide and things like that. So these risks can only be mitigated if there's a very strong local player. So if in Malaysia you have a very strong local player who says, we take a guarantee that we will set up the whole IT, the whole infrastructure, everything, then we and preferably with the government support and government protection, then of course we will invest in it, because
yeah,
that is what we are looking for.
absolutely.
Exactly, that's exactly what we are looking for.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
but
have, yes, please, if Mr.
sorry.
Iftikhar.
No, what every time anyone talks about microfinance, I'm reminded of Bangladesh example of Grameen Bank.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the most relevant examples. And I'm not saying that we don't have such schemes in India. There is a lot happening, but and it has been successful.
Yeah.
Beside that, I want to add know one more thing. Let's say this pandemic situation actually give us the new cultures, new environment, and new opportunities as well. What will happen next 5 to 10 years? how we can change the strategy. And most importantly, when we focus on the developing country, we find that they do a lot of mega projects and many more things, but still they are far more behind on investment on healthcare system. I think even India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, every country, yes, Malaysia do very well in the handling this kind of pandemic situation. But what will be the healthcare sector investment, or this kind of things? How you can motivate governments, and government can take a lot of good support from this kind of investment fund for their healthcare system, better education system, because always we are just talking about big projects, mega projects, and at the end of the day, how many of the people actually getting benefit from these mega projects?
Very few.
Yes,
Very few.
yes,
In
yes. Can
India, in India, Sharif, during the COVID, some 3,000, no, 7,500 approximately crore rupees was spent on the COVID times. The major chunk of that was obviously a lot spent on healthcare, but they had to buy ventilators. We didn't have any ventilators for the people who are actually on the deathbed. So a huge amount of money has been spent. So if you look at India healthcare scenario, I always say it is in government infrastructure is in shambles. And if you look at per thousand beds, so 0.01 thousand is the ratio in India for the beds, which is really very low as compared to the other countries in the world. And so everything is left to the private sector. But a pandemic cannot be handled by them. So most of the existing hospitals have been now changed to COVID, and it's a huge problem that we're facing. I personally every week get one or two calls for getting someone a bed who's in need in one of the larger hospitals in my city. So that is the situation. So the biggest contribution of the impact fund or the CSR fund has been towards the healthcare in the current scenario. 80% of the budget of CSR was cut from the normal conventional one and was all diverted towards COVID in and out of that about 63% in my own state, which is the Maharashtra state. So there is a huge impact as far as the healthcare system is concerned in India.
Yeah, Sharif, I think looking at it, the current COVID, right? I think there's been lot negative, lot things have been spoken in terms of the situation, how it changed for the laborers out there. There was a lot of mass scale migration back to rural. But I think one thing which COVID has done well, right? It has got healthcare infrastructure, be it in India. Okay, we were not completely prepared and we knew that. But even in some of the developed countries, right, it got healthcare. How do you deal with that? So I think I look at it from a COVID as a very positive direction, because this actually told us what is our preparedness. And I feel COVID-19 is just a small glitch in the whole thing. There could be much bigger this thing. And I think it's a good wake up call. And in terms of this, we saw very positive changes. There are very huge impact funds, specific funds which have been created on healthcare. And these are not just looking at big bang innovation. They're looking at very simple things like telemedicine, which was supported. Now, anybody across, first we used to just do telemedicine for rural, this thing where we are connecting. Now I'm connecting to doctor because I don't want to go to an ENT specialist now.
Absolutely.
I want to do a video call. Okay. There are other aspects now. If you look at manufacturing, right from mask, everything is to come from China. It was for the whole world, but for us, now the moment there was ban on exports and things, the local manufacturers and other things stepped up. And there's a lot of things, and they suddenly realized that they
Absolutely.
can actually do this as well. And now suddenly you have an ecosystem which is developed as a this thing. Of course, have we met the demand? No. Have we been able to completely control? No. But I think it has created a trigger which people are calling new normal. But for us, for me, it's kind of a new zero. So you're starting from this, okay,
Yeah.
and now you have complete this
Absolutely.
thing to go to the from 0 to 1 journey. Take the plunge. Right, which would have never happened if this thing would have not happened. We would have had the same. You would for sure see in the next budget the allocation already on the education policy. Right, it has not just impacted healthcare, education. They're now talking about how do we
Absolutely.
move. We had an announcement on the education policy, and I'm sure come Feb next year, the allocations in the budgets would be quite different than what happened for last 50 years, maybe in India.
Yes.
Exactly.
Mr. Ben, yes.
I am not that positive as Vishal or Iftikhar because maybe I may sound a bit arrogant because I live in a country which has maybe the world's best health system. This in allocation to the money to the health system, we should have, if this is a lesson for us, then we should have learned this lesson at SARS when that happened. Apparently we didn't. This is just, I call it knee-jerk reaction. Today we have this, so suddenly there's a lot of money allocation into health system, everything. Tomorrow, once the pandemic is over, people will again go back to their normal life. And that is what I'm a bit afraid of, that this is not a policy of the government. This is a knee-jerk reaction. So I think on a long term, what we are seeing, at least what I am seeing, is so I'm taking a level higher than the health, because health is just one factor. I mean, we have wiped out nearly 20 or 30% of our global GDP with this pandemic. So, and health is a very, very small factor of it. If you look at the, maybe I sound very harsh, but if you look at the mortality of the sickness, it's not very high. And China, I'm sorry to name it again, but they came up with SARS, now they come up with Corona, tomorrow they will come up with something else. So we have to look at different aspects if we have to fight this. And I think three things where we looking at from the policy point of view is, number one, cost optimization. That's where I think the businesses are going to look more and more strong into, because till now just moving production to China or moving something, it's apparently is not working. Secondly, there is going to be an anti-globalization movement, especially in the food structure. People are looking more and more, I want my food to be grown near to me. I don't know about India and Malaysia, but in Switzerland, people are going more and more into the food has to be here. And the third is digitization, especially in sector, whether it's in communication, whether it's in this webinar. For example, I would have been in Malaysia now giving the speech. Now I'm doing it on webinar. So this is a complete different set theory. And this is going to have long-term impact. And this is where the governments and the policies will change. Not investing in health sector only, because investing in health sector only is a very short term. And I sincerely believe, and I may be wrong, if I'm wrong, I'll be happy, that tomorrow when the pandemic is over, governments will again forget the doctors and the nurses, and they are one of the cheapest paid. And look at the teachers, they're one of the lowest paid people, but in fact, they are our future. They are creating our future. They're one of the lowest paid people. So things will go back. So, and that's why I said I'm not as optimistic as Vishal and Iftikhar maybe, that somehow we don't learn very fast from history.
Yes. Thank you. It's actually very good discussion and very nice outcome we get in terms of investment policy and developing nations. And we have our guests from India and other countries. And another important thing is that I want to know the concluding remarks for Mr. Ben, Mr. Iftikhar, and Vishal, and then we wrap up the session.
Sure.
Mr. Iftikhar.
So I remember that Mr. Mahatma Gandhi once said, it is better to pleasure one heart at a time by one action than for 1,000 people bowing down in prayers. So that's what my concluding remarks are.
Mr. Ben.
Oh, I always say that we are now in the world of 8 billion plus highly intelligent, innovative people. There's nothing that we cannot achieve. So we just can create wonders and miracles. We just have to work together, whether in small ways or large ways or whatever. And what Iftikhar said is correct. Whether I work for 1 million people or work for one of my neighbor, just if we all participate in tiny way or big ways, that's enough. That's enough to solve pandemics. That's enough to solve anything. And this pandemic is maybe what Iftikhar, or maybe I think Vishal said, this may just be one of the wake-up calls, and we will get many more wake-up calls in the coming years. At this rate, if we let our economy shrink by the next pandemics, nothing much will be left.
Yes, thank you. I want the concluding remarks for Mr. Vishal.
Yeah, I think I'll keep it very simple. I believe we should be using disruptive technologies to do constructive work. So that's what our mission is. So use disruptive. It's may disrupt others. Think that's lot can be created out, lot can be done, and there's a lot of scale which can be added through that.
Yes. Thank you. It's actually very good discussion. Especially we get a very good policymaker like Mr. Ben. On the other hand, Mr. Iftekhar and Mr. Vishal, they have very good experience from the industry. But by this way, we can develop our better ecosystem and global citizen relationship, and we will improve our economy. We will improve our civilization. That is our objective.
Sure.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for your
Thank you, Sharif.
discussions and advice. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.